Okay, everybody. So today we're going to be looking at the idea of freedom versus security. When we got started in class today, we took a quick Socratic quiz, and then we read through a current events article related to the idea of requiring a 24-hour wait time on getting any tattoo, something that they're looking or were looking to put in Washington, D.C. And the questions that I wanted you to consider whenever you're reading this article is, what should the role of the government be? Who should decide what is best for you, you or the government? And would Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and other founding fathers support this law? The idea is pretty simple. What we want you to be considering in this unit is, what do you value more, freedom or security? And really, a lot of government or not a lot of government, as people would refer to as being big government. So as you go through this reading, consider some of those ideas. Think about the pros and cons to it, and think about the pros and cons, or positives and negatives, to having the government involved in more areas of your life than just the basics. Those are things that are really, really big issues in the modern times, and that's things that people really, quite honestly, debate about quite a bit. Now, after that, we have a note guide for notability. So let's think of this as a quote to get started with class today. That government is best which governs least. Agree or disagree? Think about it for a few seconds, push pause, and then come back. The idea behind this question is really pretty simple. Do we want a big government or a small government? Do we want one that's doing a lot or a little? This is a quote that a lot of our founding fathers may have said. We'll leave it at that. So, today's focus is on styles of government. Power, authority, involvement. How much do we want the government to do? Our targets. First, I can identify the key differences between anarchies and authoritarian governments. And second, I can explain which I favor most, freedom or security. This question right here, ladies and gents, if I were to turn it into a question, would be our essential question for the unit. What do I value most, and what do I favor most, freedom or security? Let's think about my classroom if it was the total security version here, me with horns there, nice looking devil, saying, if you breathe out loud again in my class, you'll get 4 weeks of detention. In other words, you can't do certain things. We're trying to keep it secure, right? You could say that my heart is black heart with 3 sizes too small. Maybe that's too ruthless for me. Or my class on the other side, this is not really pure freedom. It's more like nice Mr. Wilson, but we'll come back to the idea of freedom. So if you look at the board, we have do what you want for the play-by-play. Do you want to do homework for the homework? Our target is I can do whatever I would like. The warm-up, do whatever you would like. So it's the idea of your choice and doing whatever you would like to do. Not so much about it being nice. It's more like it's not there. But we have to hit the target. To be quite honest with you, if I was to make this realistic, there wouldn't even be a teacher there. There wouldn't even be the board there. It would be more like, okay, what do you want to do? So that's really what pure freedom is. So when we look at this from a modern perspective, different countries have different types of governments, and this is something that's existed really throughout history as well. Some are very free with people making the decisions on their own, whereas in other countries their government controls just about everything. Some examples of this, you have the United States, in which we believe that we have a lot of rights, and really comparatively to some other countries we really do. And then a place like North Korea, where the government controls just about everything that people do. Very, very different. And the question becomes, why would you want a government to control everything, or why would you want the government to be totally not there? So you might say, hey, we want the government to do more because it's going to protect us, provide us with security, and provide us with our basic needs, and that's great. On the other side, people say, yeah, but I want my freedom to choose. I want to be able to do what I would like to do. So those are different perspectives here on the same type of issue. Let's look at how we can put this into a little bit of a spectrum here, going from the bottom with a total lack of government to the top, which would be an authoritarian or a purely authoritarian, very strong government. In anarchy. Anarchy, by definition, is the absence of government and authority. This means that all people behave as they wish. Now, theoretically, they would be guided by norms and expectations, kind of like these cultural ideas like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Even if you wouldn't get arrested, you still shouldn't do it. Though that could change over time. I think of this as being like the playground. Let's imagine there's a bunch of kids on a playground and no teacher or no adult there. What would happen? Well, there would still probably be some good behavior. However, eventually, would there be some people who would probably abuse the situation and do bad things? I'd say probably yes. Now, what are the pros and cons, or the positives and negatives? From a positive perspective, there's no government involvement, which would mean there would be no taxes, you couldn't be forced into the army, and those are things that some people really, really don't like. And on the other side, or on the other hand, another thing that's very positive is that you have ultimate freedom. You can do as you please, and people cannot tell you what to do. Sounds great. However, if there's no government involvement, that means there's no government program. So no tax money equals no services. I'm sure that many of you like the fact that you have roads that you can drive on instead of having to walk everywhere, correct? So that's something that's provided for by the government, the army, police, all of these different groups like that. They are there and they're provided for you by your tax dollars. So your taxes really do a lot of important things for your life, and you wouldn't have those if there was no government involvement at all. And the other thing with this is there would be no security because the ultimate freedom equals, well, a total lack of security. So you wouldn't have those people that are protecting you because there's nobody getting paid unless theoretically you paid for them on your own, which you could. But, that's the idea here with anarchy. On the total opposite end of the spectrum here, we have authoritarian governments. These are governments that make all the decisions. In other words, people have no say, they can't choose a thing. This would be the ultimate authority. I kind of envision this to myself as being like jail, even though I shouldn't say it's that bad. But it's not really ideal. To give you an example of this, if you go back in time in some countries that are communist, the way that some of them were organized and theoretically supposed to be functioning was that all people would basically be told what job they were going to do based upon what they were good at. They would be told what job to do, where they're going to go and work that job, and then they would be provided with everything they need. It wouldn't be about individual buying. It would be that every single person gets the same. It's rationing. So they say, okay, everybody gets 3 pairs of shoes a year, so every 4 months you're going to get a new pair of shoes and you're going to get a new whatever. I mean, all the way down to a new toilet seat. So kind of a goofy idea, but that really fits in here with this, and the idea that the government controls everything. And people would say, why would you ever want something like that at all? Well, the concern is that people aren't getting their basic needs met. There are many people who are poor, let's say, and this is a way to make sure that we don't have all those people who are super wealthy taking all of their own stuff and then leaving all the people who are poor to have nothing. That's the theory behind this. I'm not saying that I'm in support or against or whatever, just that's the theory with it. Again, the positives and negatives. The positive will be that theoretically, security is granted because there are very strict punishments for breaking the law, and therefore people are going to really not want to break the law because they know they can get in a lot of trouble. And also the government can make really quick decisions. That's one thing that kind of, when we look at our representative government, sometimes it takes a while for us to make quick decisions because we have to really make sure that everybody buys into it and we get lots of people to agree to it. So theoretically that could be a positive or it could really be a negative too. On the negatives though, like the straight negatives, there's no freedom, which means that strict punishment and strict control really is going to limit your freedoms quite a bit. And to be quite honest with you, the idea that they have so much power means that if you weren't guilty, you still might be found guilty of something. So don't think that it's always secure in that sense. And the citizens don't have any say. So while it might be nice that a government can decide, okay, we're going to go to war, we're going to send people in 5 minutes, it's really important that we have people having a say in our government, at least I should say from an American perspective. That's something that a lot of us really value. Now let's get to the middle. Where would you say that we have this middle ground? Representative governments tend to lie in the middle. Don't think that this is a pure always situation here, because in some situations it would lie in the middle, that is, but in some situations it's really going to be changing, and that really is based upon the specific country and the specific application of this type of government. What this means is that in a representative government there is a government with authority that can do things. However, the people also have authority. Being representative means you're getting voted for, which is really important. That's this idea of democracy, republic, parliament. They're all different groups that are voted on, but they do have power to do things, but only really with the consent of the people. Our Bill of Rights is something that I think protects us quite a bit. We'll come to the Bill of Rights here a little bit more. So when we look at this overall, we have this spectrum here: anarchy, authoritarianism, and then representative governments. What we want you to do for this activity is to compare this to your current teachers and other figures of authority. Let's start at a representative government and move from there. The scale is from -5 to 5. -5 means that this situation, this person, whatever, would be total absolute chaos. I wouldn't envision many people having this in terms of the level of authority that a person has. That would basically mean they're not present at all. A +5 means that it's absolute authority. For instance, for a teacher, you're in trouble if you breathe too loudly in class, like where they control everything to like the slightest little bit. So that would be a little bit excessive on that end. Then what I want you to do is write your numbers, and we'll come back to that. I'm going to leave that one go. So theoretically, what I want you to be considering here is on this scale, where do teachers fit? We're going to be at 5, 0, -5. So you might say, Mr. Wilson, You are not a super disciplinarian. You let us do some stuff, so Wilson's going to be right here. And if you want, which you can do on your note guide, what I want you to do is this. Look at your scale that you have here on the right, and we have the +5, 0, -5. Write in some of your teachers and where they would fit here. So you might say, okay, in this location right here, and let's see if I can, tools, annotate, let's put a text. So you might say, okay, so right here is where Wilson's going to be, and right up here is where Core is going to be. Then that's fine. You can put them there, say, okay, I believe Mr. Core is more like a 2.5, whereas Mr. Wilson's more like a 1. Whatever you would like, put them up on the side here. Let's see where they fall. And then we're going to connect this back also in here to the idea of where do the Articles of Confederation fall, which is going to be the next piece of this. So the next thing I want you to do is now go to the second video in here, which is talking about the Articles of Confederation, and which is the first attempt at government, and consider where does this fall and how does this relate. So you can move on to the next video once you are done marking down where your teachers fit in on this layout here. Okay? I hope that was clear to you and made sense.